Contents of Zechariah. First vision, the four horsemen. 1 1 through 17. Return to me, and I shall return to you, says Jehovah. And then he asks, my words and my regulations that I commanded my servant, the prophets, did they not catch up with your fathers? 1 3 and 6. The people admit they have received their just due. Zechariah's first vision now appears. At night, four horsemen stand among trees near Jerusalem, having returned from inspecting the whole earth, which they found undisturbed at ease. But Jehovah's angel, who interviews them, is disturbed over Jerusalem's condition. Jehovah himself declares his great indignation against the nations that helped toward Zion's calamity, and he says that he will certainly return to Jerusalem with mercies. His own house will be built in her, and his cities will yet overflow with goodness. 1 verse 16 and 17. Second vision, the horns and craftsmen. Chapter 1 verse 18 to 21. Zechariah sees the four horns that dispersed Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Then Jehovah shows him four craftsmen, explaining that these will come to cast down the horns of the nations that oppose Judah. Third vision, Jerusalem's prosperity. Chapter 2, 1 through 13. A man is seen measuring Jerusalem. The city will be blessed with expansion, and Jehovah will be a wall of fire all around her and a glory in the midst of her. He calls out, hey there, Zion, make your escape, and adds the warning, he that is touching you is touching my eyeball. Chapter 2, verse 7 and 8. With Jehovah residing in her, Zion will rejoice, and many nations will join themselves to Jehovah. All flesh is commanded to keep silent before Jehovah, for he has aroused himself from his holy dwelling. 2 verse 13. Fourth vision, Joshua's deliverance. 3 1 through 10. High priest Joshua is shown on trial, with Satan opposing him and Jehovah's angel rebuking Satan. Is not Joshua a log snatched out of the fire? 3 verse 2. Joshua is declared cleansed, and his befouled garments are exchanged for clean robes of state. He is urged to walk in the ways of Jehovah, who is bringing in his servant Sprout, and who puts before Joshua a stone upon which there are seven eyes. 3 verse 4 and 8. Fifth vision, the lampstand and olive trees. Chapter 4, 1 through 14. The angel awakens Zechariah to see a gold lampstand of seven lamps, flanked by two olive trees. He hears this word of Jehovah to Zerubbabel, not by military force nor by power, but by God's Spirit. A great mountain will be leveled before Zerubbabel, and the temple headstone will be brought forth to the cry. How charming! How charming! Zerubbabel has laid the temple foundations, and Zerubbabel will finish the work. The seven lamps are Jehovah's eyes that are roving about in all the earth. 4 verse 6, 10, and 7. The two olive trees are Jehovah's two anointed ones. Sixth vision, the flying scroll. 5 1 through 4. Zechariah sees a flying scroll, about 30 feet long and 15 feet wide. The angel explains that this is the curse that is going forth because of all those stealing and swearing falsely in Jehovah's name. Seventh vision, the ephah measure. 5 through 11. The lid is lifted from an ephah measure about 20 dry quarts US, revealing a woman named Wickedness. She is thrust back into the ephah, which is then lifted toward heaven by two winged women to be carried to Shinar, Babylon, and deposited there upon her proper place. 5, 8, and 11. Eighth vision, the four chariots. 6, 1 through 8. Look, from between two copper mountains, four chariots appear, with horses of different colors. They are the four spirits of the heavens. At the angel's command, they go walking about in the earth. The sprout, insincere fasting. 6, 9 through chapter 7, verse 14. Jehovah now instructs Zechariah to place a grand crown on high priest Joshua's head. He speaks prophetically of the sprout, who will build Jehovah's temple and rule as a priest on his throne. 6 verse 12. 2 years after Zechariah started prophesying, a delegation arrived from Bethel to ask the temple priests whether certain periods of weeping and fasting should continue to be observed. Through Zechariah, Jehovah asked the people and the priests whether they are really sincere in their fasting. What Jehovah desires is obedience, true justice, loving kindness, and mercies. 7, 7, and 9. Because they resist his prophetic words with stubborn shoulders and emery stone hearts, he will hurl them tempestuously throughout all the nations. Restoration, 10 men, 8, 1 through 23. Jehovah declares he will return to Zion and reside in Jerusalem, which will be called the city of trueness. Old people will sit in her public squares, and children will play there. This is not too difficult for Jehovah, the true and righteous God. Jehovah promises the seed of peace to the remnant of his people, saying, "Do not be afraid. May your hands be strong." These things they should do: speak truthfully with one another and judge with truth, keeping hearts free from calamitous schemes and false oaths. Why, the time will come when the people of many cities will certainly invite one another to go up earnestly to seek Jehovah, and 10 men out of all the languages will take hold of a skirt of a man who is a Jew and go along with God's people. 8:23. Pronouncement against nations, false shepherds. 9 to chapter 11, 17. In the book second section, chapters 9 to 14, Zechariah turns from the allegorical visions to the more customary prophetic style. He begins with the severe pronouncement against various cities, including the rocky island city of Tyre. Jerusalem is told to shout in joyful triumph, "For look, your king himself comes to you. He is righteous, yes, saved, humble, and riding upon an ass." 9:9. Cutting off war chariots and bow, this one will speak peace to the nations and will rule to the ends of the earth. Jehovah will fight for his people against Greece, and he will save them. For oh, how great his goodness is, and how great his handsomeness is. 9:17. Jehovah, the rain giver, condemns the diviners and false shepherds. He will make the house of Judah superior, and those of Ephraim like a mighty man. As for the redeemed ones, their heart will be joyful in Jehovah, and in his name they will walk about. 10 verse 7 and 12. Zechariah is now assigned to shepherd the flock, which has been sold into slaughter by compassionless shepherds who say, "May Jehovah be blessed, while I shall gain riches." 11:5. The prophet takes two staffs and names them pleasantness and union. 11:7. Breaking pleasantness, he symbolizes a covenant broken. Then he calls for his wages, and they weigh him out 30 pieces of silver. Jehovah orders Zechariah to throw it into the treasury, and with superlative sarcasm says, "The majestic value with which I have been valued." 11:13. Now staff union is cut up, breaking the brotherhood of Judah and Israel. A sword will come up upon the false shepherds who have neglected Jehovah's sheep. Jehovah wars, becomes king. 12 to chapter 14 verse 21. Another pronouncement begins. Jehovah will make Jerusalem a bowl that causes people to reel, and a burdensome stone that scratches those lifting it. He will annihilate all nations that come against Jerusalem. Upon the house of David, Jehovah will pour out the spirit of favor and entreaties, and the people will look upon the one they pierced, through wailing over him, as in the wailing over an only son. 12:10. Jehovah of armies, the very parent of such one, must wound him, so that in shame he removes his prophet's garb. Jehovah's associate shepherd is to be struck and the flock scattered, but Jehovah will refine a third part to call upon his name. Jehovah will say, "It is my people," and it will answer, "Jehovah is my God." 13:9. Look, there is a day coming belonging to Jehovah. All nations will attack Jerusalem, and half the city will go into exile, leaving behind a remnant. Then Jehovah will go forth and war against those nations, as in the day of his warring in the day of fight. 4 1 and 3. The mountain of olive trees on the east of Jerusalem will split from east to west, making a valley for refuge. In that day, living waters will flow east and west from Jerusalem, in summer and in winter, and Jehovah must become king over all the earth. 14:9. While Jerusalem enjoys security, Jehovah will scourge those warring against her. As they stand, their flesh, eyes, and tongues will rot away. Confusion will hit them. The hand of each one will turn against his neighbors. Those left alive of all the nations will have to go up from year to year to bow down to the King, Jehovah of armies. 14:16. Why beneficial? All who study and meditate on the prophecy of Zechariah will be benefited in gaining faith strengthening knowledge. More than 50 times Zechariah draws attention to Jehovah of armies as the one who fights for and protects his people, filling them with power according to their need. When mountain-like opposition threatened the completion of the temple building, Zechariah declared, "There is the word of Jehovah of Zerubbabel, saying, not by military force, nor by power, but by my spirit, Jehovah of armies has said. Who are you, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, you will become a leveled land." The temple was completed with the help of Jehovah's Spirit. Likewise, today, obstacles will melt if tackled with faith in Jehovah. It is just as Jesus told his disciples, "If you have faith the size of a mustard grain, you will say to this mountain, 'Transfer from here to there,' and it will transfer, and nothing will be impossible for you." Zechariah 4, 6 and 7, Matthew 17:20. In chapter 13, verses 2 through 6, Zechariah illustrates the loyalty that to this day marks Jehovah's organization. This must transcend every human relationship, such as that of close flesh and blood relatives. If a close relative should prophesy falsehood in the name of Jehovah, that is, speak contrary to the kingdom message and try wrongly to influence others in the congregation of God's people, the family members of that one must loyally support any judicial action taken by the congregation. Same position must be held with regard to any intimate associates who prophesy falsely, so that he may become ashamed and wounded at heart because of his wrong action. As our introductory paragraph showed, Jesus' entry into Jerusalem as king, humbled and riding upon an ass, his betrayal for 30 pieces of silver, the scattering of his disciples at the time, and his being pierced on the stake by the soldier's spear were all foretold by Zechariah in exact detail. 9 9 9, 11 12, 13 7, 12 10. The prophecy also names the sprout as the builder of the temple of Jehovah. A comparison of Isaiah 11 1 through 10, Jeremiah 23 5, and Luke 1 32 and 33 shows this one to be Jesus Christ, who will rule as king over the house of Jacob forever. Zechariah describes the sprout as a priest upon his throne, which ties in with the Apostle Paul's words, "Jesus has become a high priest according to the manner of Melchizedek forever. Also, he has sat down at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens." Zechariah 6:12 and 13, Hebrews 6:20, chapter 8 and 1. Thus, the prophecy points to the sprout as high priest and a king at God's right hand in the heavens, while at the same time it proclaims Jehovah as sovereign ruler over all. And Jehovah must become king over all Israel. In that day, Jehovah will prove to be one, and his name one. Zechariah 14:9. Referring to that time, the prophet repeats the phrase "in that day" some 20 times, and it even concludes his prophecy. An examination of its many occurrences shows it to be the day when Jehovah cuts off the names of the idols and removes the false prophets. 13 2 and 4. It is the day when Jehovah wars on the aggressor nations and spreads confusion in their ranks as he annihilates them and provides the valley of his mountain as a refuge for his own people. 14 1 through 5 and 13. 12:18 and 9. Yes, Jehovah their God will certainly save them in that day, like the flock of his people, and they will call one to the other from under the vine and fig trees. Zechariah 9:16, 3:10, Micah 4:4. It is the glorious day when Jehovah of armies will reside in the midst of his people, and when living waters will go forth from Jerusalem. These words of Zechariah identify events in that day as harbingers of a new heaven and a new earth of kingdom promise. Zechariah 2:11, 14:8, Revelation 21:1 through 3, 22:1. Who has despised the day of small beginnings, small things, as Jehovah? Look, this prosperity is to embrace the entire earth. Many peoples and mighty nations will actually come to seek Jehovah of armies in Jerusalem. And 10 men out of all the languages of the nations will take hold of the skirt of a man who is a Jew, saying, we will go with you people, for we have heard that God is with you people. In that day, even the bells of the horse will bear the words, holiness belongs to Jehovah. These heartwarming prophecies are most beneficial to consider, for they show that Jehovah's name will indeed be sanctified through his kingdom seed. Zechariah 4:10, chapter 8, verse 22 and 23, chapter 14, verse 20.